Good morning and welcome to Reliable Sources. I'm Brian Stelter, and a happy Easter Sunday to you at home. Up first this morning, serious accusations of journalistic wrongdoing that involve one of the country's most respected news organizations, CBS News. They come from Sharyl Attkisson, an investigative reporter who resigned from CBS last month after more than 20 years there. Since her resignation, she's appeared on Fox News twice, and that has stirred up speculation that she may be hired there in the future. And that comes amid allegations and anonymously sourced news stories that say Attkisson left CBS because she sensed liberal bias. In other words, because supposedly liberal executives and producers at CBS did not like the stories she did, stories critical of the Obama administration on polarizing topics like the president's healthcare overhaul and the killing of 4 Americans in Benghazi, Libya. Now, when I sat down to talk with Attkisson this week, it turns out she had a story to tell that she had not told before, of a news organization that she claims would cave to corporate interests and let political bias dictate what stories got to air. I also asked her some important questions that Fox News had not asked her about claims of a lack of accuracy and journalistic rigor in her own work. Listen to her story. Sharyl, thank you for joining me. You worked here at CNN for a few years in the 1990s and then 21 years at CBS News. Yeah. So what led you to decide to resign?
There were a host of factors, but I would say primarily in the last couple of years, there was a declining appetite on the broadcast for original and investigative reporting, at least the kind that I was offering. And it did get to the point where it didn't seem like there was a lot left for me to do.
CBS News' slogan is original reporting, but you say there wasn't much of an appetite for your kind?
I think in general, the correspondents will tell you at CBS and other places as well that there is a declining appetite for this on the broadcast. And in some cases, I think it's just seen as maybe too much trouble because of the pushback and the organized campaigns that come to bear on us when we're working on these stories and afterwards as well.
What kind of campaign?
Special interests. Government has adopted campaigns that remind me much of what corporations have always done. Email campaigns, telephone calls.
You mean complaints about a story after it's aired, that kind of thing?
Prior to it airing, when they get wind that it's going to air. As it airs, after it airs, there are surrogates who act in the capacity of bloggers. Some of them, I think, hold themselves out to be independent and really are not independent at all. But they launch this sort of opposition campaign or effort that starts very early as soon as they catch wind that a controversial story might be done.
It's coming. I remember in a radio interview in March you said, with various stories, you get the idea that at some point that they just want you to stop. And it's not just with political stories. You went on to say it's with stories that go after other interests, corporations, different things. Who are they in those cases? Is that CBS producers or executives, someone else?
Over the years, it's been a variety of people, but I would say more recently, the unstoppable force has been the broadcast, the programs, the producers that decide what gets on the air on a given day.
So the executive producers of the CBS EV News or CBS This Morning or other programs?
For example, yes, executive producers, senior producers.
Can you tell me about a concrete example of a story that seemed to get quashed along the way or shut down along the way?
There was a story that looked at a corporate interest, a very powerful corporate interest that I know had been calling around on Capitol Hill and to analysts to try to squelch reporting on the topic. And I assume they also were speaking with CBS because that's the normal process. And I thought it was a terrific story. My 2 producers thought so as well, as did some of the managers who looked at it. And in the end, that story was never to air. It was not said to me that it wasn't airing because there was a corporate interest at stake. We were told instead that at the last minute, after it had already been approved and done and people liked it, that it wasn't perhaps very interesting, or that perhaps we should wait until the government came down and made up its mind on the controversy at hand, and then perhaps we could do the story.
What are the reasons, so far as you can tell, for why you had increasing amounts of difficulty getting on to the air? We're talking about, as I mentioned earlier, a 21-year history at CBS. So are there specific reasons you can cite for why you think you were having a hard time getting stories on?
We had an almost total change in management in the time after Katie Couric left. The top managers who were very much into the stories about government waste and government oversight,
right,
all of them left at one time. So
new president came in, new chairman of CBS News, bunch of new bosses as well.
Yes.
Well, let me read this from the Washington Post. This is from March 10th, right around the time you were resigning from CBS. And Eric Wemple wrote, according to a CBS News source, you felt that you were being kept off the CBS EV News because of political considerations. Did you feel that way? I mean, were there political considerations at times?
You know, it's fairly well discussed inside CBS News that there are some managers recently who've been so ideologically entrenched that there's a feeling and a discussion that some of them, certainly not all of them, have a difficult time viewing a story that may reflect negatively upon government or the administration as a story of value.
So you're saying they are liberal or Democrats?
I don't know what their registered party is. I just know that the tendency on the part of some of these managers who have key influences has been they never mind the stories that seem to, for example, and I did plenty of them, go against the grain of the Republican Party, but they do often seem to feel defensive about, almost personally defensive about stories that could make the government look bad, even if it's something as simple as a government waste story that doesn't pinpoint anybody in particular and that takes on both parties. It seems as though some are very sensitive about any story that might appear as though it criticizes the government.
A couple of the news stories about your resignation cited one particular executive, Patricia Shevlin, who was the executive producer of the CBS Evening News, as someone that you had clashed with. Is that an example of someone who you felt had this ideological stand and was uncomfortable with stories about the administration that were unflattering?
Pat Shevlin was the executive producer of the Evening News, and I think it's no secret there are a number of people at CBS News that had some serious issues, but it wasn't isolated to that alone. I think
You say serious issues. What do you mean?
There were discussions about the types of stories that got on the air. There were discussions about the heavy-handed editing. In other words, we had not experienced, at least I had not experienced, and some of them said they had not experienced, the extent to which some of the editing went on. That may not be just her. There's certainly a group of managers in what they call the fishbowl in New York who are responsible. So it's hard to say it's all at the guidance of her, but she is executive producer of the show.
The president of CBS News in the last couple of years has been David Rhodes, and his brother Ben Rhodes is a speechwriter at the White House. Do you ever think that had any effect on their interest or lack of interest in stories involving the administration?
In one-on-one conversations that David and I had, he was very much in tune with, he told me at least, the types of stories that I do, the types of journalism that he thought we should be doing. And I would say we had a meeting of the minds on that didn't translate to the broadcast.
Is there a pattern that you detected if you would pitch a story about Republicans that was troubling, that it would get rejected? If you pitched a story about Democrats that was troubling, it would get supported? Was that a pattern?
In general, there was a pattern of many more stories in recent years being embraced if they were seen as positive to government, the administration, and even certain corporations, than if there were stories that were pitched that could be perceived as negative to government, administration, and certain corporations.
And is that, just to get the timeline right, is that after 2009, or is that at all times, including when a Republican was in the White House?
I don't remember having political troubles per se. You're asking me a question I really have to think hard about, and I don't have the time to go through it right now. But I would say in general, I don't remember any of the same kind of problems when we had the last management of administration. Rick Kaplan was executive producer, Paul Friedman was vice president, Sean McManus was president of the news. And in that era, I proposed stories and no one ever asked me where they were going or what side they might come down on in the end, because we often didn't know. We would cover the story and it ended up where it ended up. I think the change now is there are managers in New York who want to know how the story is going to come out, and if it doesn't come out the way they like, for many different reasons, it'll, as I've said, die the death of a thousand cuts and probably not air.
Well, I ask about the timeline because there's a difference potentially between avoiding stories that would hurt the Obama administration and avoiding stories that would hurt whatever administration happens to be in power.
I didn't sense any resistance in doing stories that were perceived to be negative to the Bush administration by anybody ever. I have done stories that I perceived were not received well because people thought they would reflect poorly upon this administration.
Now, I need